There have been big changes within the UK government after a tax scandal forced its Deputy Prime Minister to resign. Its Premier, Keir Starmer, has refreshed his top team as he comes under increased scrutiny over issues like migration and a flagging economy. After a bumpy first year in the job, can the Prime Minister turn things around and boost the Labour Party's popularity? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Britain's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has had a less than perfect first year in office. Now, he's lost his number two following a financial impropriety. Although minimising the damage by quickly reshuffling his cabinet, Starmer's centre-left party is falling behind in the polls and public discontent is growing, with the populist party Reform UK looking to take advantage.
One of the Labour Party's biggest beasts, dubbed the Red Queen for her left-wing credentials, Angela Rayner has fallen on her sword after admitting to not paying tens of thousands of pounds worth of property tax. Until last week, she was the Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Party Leader and the Minister in charge of housing. Now sent to the back benches of Parliament, her downfall could have been a political disaster for the Prime Minister. But Keir Starmer hasn't let a good crisis go to waste, quickly getting people through this door at 10 Downing Street. With Rayner's resignation as the catalyst, he's freshened up his top team in an attempt to reboot his premiership. Replacing Rayner as Deputy PM is David Lammy, former Foreign Secretary, who has also been made the Justice Secretary. He will be replaced by former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, and her old role has been given to former Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, the first Muslim woman to run the Home Office in its history.
Let me welcome you to this Cabinet team and to the next stage of our journey as we move from the stage of fixing foundations now on to the stage of national renewal.
The Cabinet reshuffle also took the wind out of Nigel Farage's sails. His Reform UK party and its conference was overshadowed by Starmer's initiative. The right-wing populists have been leading opinion polls for months, with illegal and legal migration a key concern for voters. Labour will be hoping Mahmood, who has Pakistani heritage, will be able to strengthen border controls.
I look at a community that I represent, which is 70% non-white. And if you ask my constituents, they want a fair managed migration system.
Starmer has also been plagued by a series of policy U-turns and a sluggish economy, with some accusing him of taking his eye off the ball domestically, focusing more attention on global issues. But will a fresh-faced cabinet be able to mask the cracks?
Well, around the table today, we're joined by Danny Shaw. Danny is a former advisor to the Labour Party. He also advised Yvette Cooper, who has just become the new Foreign Secretary in the UK government. Annunciata Rees-Mogg is also with us. She's a former Brexit Party MEP. And Nigel Nelson, journalist and the Daily Mirror's longest-serving political editor. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Nigel, to you first of all, Keir Starmer came to power July of last year with a landslide win, but all of that political capital he has burnt through very quickly.
Yes, and it was also a win with a very bad share of the vote. So he ended up with 2/3 of the MPs on a third of the vote. So it was a good win, but a very shallow one. And that's one of his problems. But yes, I mean, losing his Deputy Prime Minister was a serious blow. And I can't think of a worse nightmare for Keir Starmer at the moment than trying to deal with a deputy leadership election when you're in government. Because inevitably you're going to find that the candidates coming forward, they have to criticise him and the Labour government.
Annunciata, to you, how has Starmer got so unpopular so quickly?
Starmer seems to have had an incredible ability to spend 14 years in the wilderness not preparing to win. He seemed to come in last year with no plan of how to change, which was the promise on the election ticket, or how to improve anything in the UK at all. And those chickens have come home to roost. It has become obvious that there was no plan. He's also holding together this incredibly difficult coalition of the Blairites, the real left centrists, and the really very left-wing parts of his party that are all seeing it for what it is. The emperor's new clothes. There's nothing there.
So you think all these difficult factions inside Labour, he's really struggling to keep a hold on?
And Rayner gave him a support base that he's now lost. So he actually needs the next deputy leader to be bringing with them a faction that he isn't a natural leader of.
Thank you, Annunziata. Danny, to you, when you walk around towns and cities, you talk to people, there's a lot of anger out there at the moment, isn't there, across the UK?
Yeah, and understandably so. We have 14 years of Conservative government which left the country a lot poorer and left public services on their knees. Labour came in with this plan for change, and it was going to take time. The disappointing thing for me is that we don't seem to have any patience at the moment. Everyone wants results yesterday. I think in the past people would have given a government 2 or 3 years and then would have judged them on the results after that period. People were judging Keir Starmer after just a couple of months. Now, of course, there have been some serious mistakes over the last year or so, and it has taken a while for him, I think, to get the right team around him. They could have been better prepared for government. But also, they have put some good foundations in place, and it's just going to take a bit of time. And that's the thing, I think, that, you get the feeling that people just don't have the time. If they're not getting a result within a couple of months, then they're going to go elsewhere. And that's exacerbated by the fact that Labour's messaging has been so poor, the communication skills have been wanting, and Keir Starmer, that is one of his weaknesses.
Thanks, Danny. Nigel, migration is a huge talking point in many countries, but in the UK, it's dominating the agenda. There was one day recently, almost 1,100 people came across from France on dinghies. This will be the defining story of Starmer's time if he can't sort it out.
Yes, I think that immigration a year ago was probably number 3 in public concern. It's now number 1. And certainly it's become his most difficult and intractable problem. He's got Reform UK biting at his heels with policies to try and deal with immigration. Sound good, don't work. He's got to find some that do work, knowing all the time that all he can do is reduce cross-channel migrant crossings. What he can't do is stop them.
Annunziata, how does he deliver when he said, stop the boats, smash the gangs, and if anything, the situation has got even worse?
Not if anything, it has undoubtedly got worse, that the numbers have gone up on Keir's watch. Yvette Cooper, I assume, tried. I actually think she's a competent person. I think the Home Office is probably the most challenging position anyone can have, but that doesn't change the fact she hasn't succeeded in delivering their election promises. I don't think they had a plan to smash the gangs. It was wishful thinking. But now we've got this new heavy hitter, hard nut, Shabana Mahmood, who is supposedly going to completely transform how they deal with illegal immigration. I don't feel that she's someone we can have confidence in to be on top of the detail, and this is a very detailed brief. You've got to know exactly what you're doing, exactly how you're going to do it, and I don't think the plan is there by Labour. I'm not entirely sure that from the party or from Keir himself, there's the will to change it at all.
Thank you. Danny, you worked very closely with the previous Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Shabana Mahmood comes in now as Home Secretary, talking tough. It always happens, they come in talking tough, but it strikes me that the UK system is what is holding back any change on this.
Well, there are some systemic problems that have to be addressed. The Human Rights Act needs to be amended. The interpretation of it as it relates to immigration and asylum cases needs to be changed to give the courts more freedom, if you like, to reject claims. and not accept them on human rights grounds. And that's something that I think is going to happen, and you'll see that, I think, with Shabana Mahmood. I think what Shabana Mahmood proved at the Ministry of Justice, this is where I don't agree with Annunziata, is that she had an incredibly difficult beginning because she inherited this problem from the Conservatives where we didn't have enough prison places for the prison population. That was a problem that had been stored up by the Conservatives. And she dealt with it. She dealt with it by making tough decisions to release people without a huge public backlash because she laid the groundwork. She decided to set up some independent reviews to give her political and legal cover to do that. And because she's coped well with that very difficult brief, that's why she's been brought into the Home Office.
But let's, Annunziata, so it's ultimately a hospital pass from the Conservatives.
There was
that's what he's saying.
backlash. There was immense backlash. That we were promised that violent criminals would not be released, and they were. We were promised that domestic abusers would not be released, and they were. That she didn't actually do what she said she'd do. She went much broader than that and released different people.
The scale of the
there were
damage
other
was
ways
much less than it could have been because she and her team dealt with it well.
Much less does not wash with the British public. We live in a democracy and they vote on what they see and what they experience. And what we saw was violent criminals being released back onto our streets. When it came to the changes in sentencing law, she had no idea it was going on until Robert Jenrick stood up in Parliament and told her that they had changed the rules. And she wrote them. She wrote them a very nice letter saying, please do change the rules. And they turned around and said, no, it's got to be legislative change. She has not been succeeding.
When you look across the ministers in the government, she's probably the one who has succeeded at the Ministry of Justice, given those difficult problems. And that's why she's now at the Home Office. I think Yvette Cooper laid some really good foundations with some technical changes and so on. But at the end of the day, it's a results business. Small boat crossings were coming up and asylum hotels still at 200 asylum hotels, and she failed to deal with those too. And although she's laid the groundwork for it, we now need someone else who perhaps can make decisions more swiftly and make tough decisions to try and make some progress on that. And I do think if the government makes progress on closing asylum hotels month by month, steady progress, if they manage to get this deal with the French, the one-in, one-out deal, if they manage to ramp that up, then I think people are willing to listen to what they're saying, could give them a chance.
One in, one out is the most meaningless policy of all time. It doesn't change the fact that we are net taking a huge number of illegal migrants. So far, zero have gone. It is an absolute...
It hasn't started.
It has started. It started 2 weeks ago.
No, it didn't. They put 100 people ready to be taken over to France, but it hasn't actually physically started.
It was meant to have started, and it hasn't. That
They've
is part of the problem.
People and they will probably, some of them will
in
be
the
going
background,
back
setting the agenda, I've noticed the last few months in the UK. Starmer can't really get any policy going forward. Nigel Farage, I want to talk about him, Nigel. The fact that he is gaining momentum, he's gaining popularity, and when you speak to people on the street, the one question people keep asking me is, will he be the next Prime Minister?
Yeah,
how much of a problem is Farage for Starmer?
Farage is Labour's main opposition at the moment, and so Keir Starmer is gearing everything towards Nigel Farage and reform. Nigel Farage talks a good game, he is very charismatic, probably the best politician of the last 20 years, purely as a politician. Delve into the policies and they don't work. Look at the immigration one, and there's nothing there that you really can say, oh, that's going to actually change everything. But he's not in government, therefore, on that basis, then he can say pretty much what he likes. They're also the new kids on the block, so they haven't got any mistakes behind them. So as far as the public are concerned, hey, they're talking a new game, let's give them a try.
Annunziata, I just want to make a point about Farage and his party. Talking about a game, if he were to play five-a-side football, he currently doesn't have enough members of Parliament to form a team. He's got 4 elected members of Parliament. Can someone with that small a base right now actually take power in 4 years' time?
And I was about to say that of all the people to talk with a metaphor about football too, I'm the wrong one. But even I can get 5-a-side needs more than 4 players. And of course they do. But I do not support reform, and I think, Nigel, you made some very good points on how they're being given the leeway because they don't have the baggage that the big parties have, but also that there's not the same judgment placed on them, not the same expectations. The detail still isn't there. Could be there, but it isn't yet. But we've got to take them seriously, that when they're at over 30% in the polls, it is not beyond the realm of belief that they will be the next government.
Thanks, Annunziata. Danny, how much of a problem is communication for this Labour government, and Starmer in particular?
Well, it's a major problem because you have a leader who is not good at communicating. I know him and I've met him privately many times, and he's very funny and he's very human, he's very warm, but he comes across as very sort of wooden. It's not easy for him to sort of answer questions on the spot. You always feel that he sort of has to hold back, very careful with what he says. And that's clearly an issue in an age when communication is so important. Now, he has improved a little bit. What he needs is people around him who are good communicators, who can get the message across, which is why I think the loss of Angela Rayner is a real blow, because she was someone that could cut through. But there are other people who I think are good. Peter Kyle is excellent at that. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is very good, and Shabana Mahmood as well. So I think you want to, and David Lammy, who I'm very pleased is now in a domestic policy role, the Ministry of Justice. I think his skills as Foreign Secretary are better suited to a domestic role because he's a brilliant communicator, orator, very charismatic. So you want to see them more at the fore to try and push that message and explain to people what the government is doing and the progress they're making.
Annunziata, what does Starmer stand for? If you're looking in an international audience, what is Starmerism?
I love the fact that I am here with two men of the left. I have no
I'm in the middle.
Exactly, and I have no idea what your politics are, and I leave them out of it. But talking about comms, what is there to sell? Communications is selling a product. It's not creating the product. No one has any idea what Starmer stands for. He stands, as far as I can tell, as far as most of the British public can tell, for keeping the left together somehow. He wants a bit of this, a bit of that. He wants to offend no one. He might be lovely in person, but that is not a selling point. That is what people say of failed leaders, and he is failing.
Actually, is someone who's not flashy. He's not interested in gimmicks that we saw from the previous administration, but he's trying to fix some of the deep-seated problems, and he's struggling certainly on the small boats front. But on immigration, it's quite clear what the direction of travel is to try and ensure that we no longer rely so much on overseas labour, but we train people here so they have the skills and they can do the jobs. The health service, you're seeing increases in appointments and waiting lists come down and so on. He's trying to fix public services. Now, he's not getting that message across. It's quite clear to me what he's trying to do. It's not about flashy or gimmicks or some massive vision. It's about actually making the country work a bit better and public services be more responsive to people's needs. Now, it's a failure that they haven't got that across, but I don't think you need to have Starmerism. It's very overrated, this idea you've got to have an ism, you've got to have an ideology.
It is purely managerial, and you actually need to have a reason to be making the changes behind you. You need to take the people with you, you need to take the voters with you, you need to take the country with you.
Well, just on that
and
point,
he's
Nigel,
taking no one.
How does he now take the British public with him for the next 4 years, if he lasts that long?
Well, the first thing he's got to do is have a few successes. I think that the real problem there, you did ask what Starmerism is. There is no such thing. The two best prime ministers of my lifetime have been Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair. And the reason was they had a political philosophy underpinning everything they did. They had a direction. You knew where both of them were going. With Keir Starmer, you don't. So he has the managerial style. What that therefore means, he's got to be a successful manager. That's all he can actually rely on.
So
that's what we said about Theresa May, and she was an absolutely disastrous
Yeah, but Keir Starmer may not be in the same way.
Because
Brexit
you just
brought her
try
down
and
anyway.
manage what you've got. What
But
you need to
a lot of
do
people would say,
is
hang on,
set a
Annunziata,
direction.
hang on. A lot of people would say she inherited a complete mess because of Brexit. And then she was tasked with delivering something the party was fighting.
That she didn't believe in.
Yeah,
and
that
that's
she
the
didn't
problem.
believe in.
And she was the worst person at sorting out a mess because her skills at sort of building relationships and communications are non-existent.
Are about the same as Starmer's, that neither of them are natural leaders.
Well, she
neither
was shy.
Of them.
I mean, she was shy and
Starmer
found it-
gives the
found it
same
difficult.
impression.
Well, but I mean, you know, I spent time privately with him. He's great fun.
Yeah.
But Danny's right. It doesn't come across when he's making a speech because he looks and seems incredibly wooden.
And
Annunziata,
the
can I-
only really revealing speech he ever gave, he then apologised for. And
Island of Strangers, yeah.
what would the public are left thinking? Does he believe that immigration is a really serious problem where we've become an island of strangers? Or is he just another stooge on the left who thinks
Unnecessary
we
to
should take
apologise
everyone?
For that.
So tell me, Annunziata, how long until there's an internal challenge then? As we've seen with the Conservative Party before, Labour normally don't do this.
I'm going to hand this one back to the Labour
Nigel?
supporters in the room. Tories do it easily. How does Labour do it?
I'm not sure there will be one. If there is some major blunder, yes, indeed there would. But you've got to bear in mind that he's got a huge majority in Parliament. Despite that lack of numbers of votes, he did get this huge majority in Parliament. Very difficult to unseat him now. It's difficult to unseat a Labour Prime Minister anyway. Much more difficult.
Labour doesn't really have a democratic system in the same way as the Conservatives.
They're not quite as ruthless as the Tories
He
are.
might have a huge majority, but he just lost on the welfare bill that he needed to get through.
But that didn't lead to anyone
that
talking
majority-
about him. He must go.
I think it's the May elections next year are key.
You think the local council elections?
I think I think the elections in Scotland and Wales, I believe, as
Yeah.
well. I think if Labour has a disastrous performance, I think he will seriously look at his position and decide. I think the thing about Keir Starmer, he's an honourable man, and he's also very self-reflective. And if he really thinks that actually he's doing more damage to the party and the government by being there, it wouldn't be a surprise if he steps aside. And it wouldn't be surprised also if other people close around him say this is a really position that we can't get out of. We need a new leader. I think that's the key moment.
Danny, we've seen Starmer step up on the world stage with Ukraine, the war in Gaza, becoming friends with President Trump. Has he kind of taken his eye off the ball domestically then?
I do think that he has to some extent. I mean, you know, no criticism of him for breaking off his holiday to go to Washington a couple of weeks ago. But where is the urgency when you have this issue around asylum hotels and the protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping and this court case which was so damaging to the government and so on? Where was the urgency?
Annunziata, just as we reach the end of the conversation, how much of a problem do you think it is that you've got a Prime Minister from North London, he's of a legal mind, and, you know, he's a very, very middle-class man. Does he really get the anger that's out there in working-class communities about what's happening to the country?
I live in a very rural part of the country, a county called Lincolnshire, with our local town Skegness being one of the fading but glorious seaside resorts that have really full working-class roots. And he could not be more alien to the farmers, to the coastal dwellers. And I think we do need the next leader of this country to be someone who can unite the whole country. I don't agree that the next deputy leader has to be a northern woman. I don't think we should have that identity politics, but we need a communicator who can speak to every part of this country.
Nigel, what happens next? Does he keep going to 2029, or do you think there may even be an election before then?
I think, but barring catastrophes, we can't see what's around the corner. Yeah, I think he'll make it to 2029, yeah.
And in terms of his team, he keeps changing teams, shuffling ministers internally.
Well, he doesn't. He's actually, this is the first time he's done it since he's been Prime Minister.
Yeah, but Sue Gray went Chief of Staff,
But,
then there was the
but when it
comms
comes
guy.
to the internal teams, yes, he has been doing a lot of shake-ups there, quite rightly so, because they weren't delivering.
Danny, just a final point to you. Starmer's had a really rocky first 15, 16 months in the job. He strikes me as a fundamentally decent man.
He is.
But in terms of being ruthless, making the decisions, upsetting people who perhaps need upsetting, is he the right person to be Prime Minister?
He's not a knee-jerk politician. He just doesn't react to an instant headline. But when he decides that he needs to make a decision, he will make it. And you have seen in the past couple of weeks with some of the decisions around the cabinet, he has moved key people because he's felt that the government isn't delivering. So I don't think that's the issue. I think what the government has got to do is get the governing right. That's the most important thing. They're not in campaigning mode. They're not in worrying about the polls and Nigel Farage right at the moment. They've got to govern properly and get the decisions right and then communicate those decisions in a much better way.
Final point to you, Annunziata. How long do you give Starmer then?
I think it's very, very difficult for a Labour leader to be ousted. However, I think we may have to face the IMF. I think they may impose restrictions on our country that are not palatable to the left wing of his party, and it may be before 2029.
Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Nigel Nelson and Danny Shaw, thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me and Brady and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.